Welcome back to the channel. I am Domiko L. Cunningham, Dr. Media, with your daily fix of digital prescription right here on the Dr. Media and Phoenix Inceptions Media channel. So today I wanted to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart right now. It is actually my home server. Uh, I currently run a server setup which is a NAS server. And I've had a couple of these in the past. I've had some from D-Link. I've had some from Netgear. And as you can see on the page that I'm currently looking at right now, I can see there's stuff from Synology, there's stuff from Western Digital. So there's tons of companies that make these NAS drives. They make these network attached storage device, and that's what a NAS truly is. A NAS is a network attached storage device. So it's usually a box, and if we can see with these, with the Western Digitals and the Synologies, and even the Netgears and everything else, we can see that they're really just a box that's full of hard drives running a basic operating system. Now, a lot of these drives, they actually run a very slimmed down version of Linux. So a lot of these will be running something like a damn small Linux, or a variant of that nature. That's basically a small operating system that just gets enough up where you can actually get access to the drives and be able to have Zfs shares and things of that nature, or web dev or DAV shares, or whatever you're using for your network. And that's what these boxes really are meant to do. They're meant to be low power, low cost, and really just be a way for you to serve out information to your home network or to your local, Soho, your little small home office. Um, well, the thing is that these things range in price from, you know, $119 up to some of the Buffalo Technology ones that are $900 for some of these things. If we take a quick look over at Newegg and look at some of the NAS stuff that's there, we can see that there's a wide gamut of prices for these things, and you can get them um, from tons of different companies, and you can get them where they're realistically they're there just to hold information. Now, one thing that I would say if you're looking at a NAS drive, and we're going to talk a little bit today about what some of the advantages of having a NAS drive on your network can actually do for you, even if you're not in a business environment. Because a lot of people I've heard before, they're like, "Oh, I don't need something like a network attached storage device because realistically, I'm just doing home computing and I don't really need all of that. I don't need all that extra stuff and all the extra overhead and stuff to worry about." Well, I can honestly tell you that everybody probably needs, if you're a consumer of media like I am, and you have a bunch of different files, and you've got video files, you've got Word documents, you've got Excel files, you've got PowerPoints. If you've got a collection of just digital junk, then you need to have a place to keep all your digital junk. And a NAS drive is a great place to be able to do that. Now, one thing that I will say about the NAS drives that are available from some of the larger companies, like QNAP and Buffalo and even stuff like Synology and the Netgear stuff. The one thing that I will say is that I've had I've had NAS drives from D-Link. I've had NAS enclosures. There's some companies that used to just sell the enclosure, and the enclosure was basically just that. It was just the box, and you had to buy your own hard drives for it. Those, I really enjoy that. And it's not because I'm into the whole back end kind of hack stuff the way you want to type of thing, but realistically, I enjoy that because they had already built the box for me, and all I had to do was populate it with drives. Now, there's some problems with that as well. Some of the downsides is that there might be a set limit on how big your drive can be. You might only be able to have a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte drive in that enclosure. Um, and so that's one of the things too. Now, one thing I do want to talk about with these NAS drives, a lot of these you'll see Western Digital has this whole set of things called their home cloud, and their home clouds are basically sold as being a NAS drive for your home, but they're not I really don't consider it to be a true NAS drive. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, Dr. Media, what are you doing? Why are you talking bad about the Western Digital home cloud drives? Well, this is the problem that I have with these particular NAS variants. The home clouds, usually they're one hard drive. So you might get a 2 terabyte or a 3 terabyte or 1 terabyte NAS from home cloud from Western Digital, and it's just that. It's just one drive. Now, part of the advantage of having a NAS drive is being able to have some sense of security about your data that's on that system. This right here is really nothing more than a giant hard drive, like a portable hard drive with a network card in it. And that's so not cool because it really doesn't have the advantages of what even, like a low end like Netgear would have. And that's part of my problem with the way that these NAS drives from Western Digital, these home cloud ones, are sold. Because basically it's their old Western Digital book looking hard drive that's had a infusion of a NIC card, and now it has the ability to sit on your network. Wow, that's really awesome, right? No, it's not. Don't believe that. It's not awesome. So I'm not a huge fan of those types of drives. Now, what I do like are the drives that are either 2 hard drive slot drives or 4 or 6. At the least, you want to, and in my opinion, in the least, you want to get a 4 drive, a 4 bay NAS drive. And I'll tell you why. One of the advantages is that once you're able to run 3 hard drives and one of your NAS drives, you can then use a RAID that we call RAID 5. And it sounds like Twitter's going off. Let's check that. But you can use a setup which is called RAID 5. And RAID 5 is really, really nice. Now, it's not, having a RAID drive in your NAS is not a replacement for backing up your data. You still want to do data backups. Like, you still want to have some type of for things that you really truly care about, you should have those things saved in a couple of different places. And I don't just mean like on a couple of different DVDs or Blu-rays or something like that. You'd want to have some type of off-site storage available for things that you really truly care about, like family pictures that you don't want to lose and things of that nature. So the thing that having a RAID setup starts to entail is that you have RAID being able to go from RAID 0 up to RAID 10, and there's all these different types of RAIDs that are in there that you can actually use. Now, a RAID setup is basically a redundant array of inexpensive disk. That's what a RAID is. A RAID is a redundant array of inexpensive disk. RAID, right? Awesome, RAID. So with the RAID, you're able to, with a 3, so at RAID 5, you're able to do something which is really cool, which you can have all 3 of those disks basically appear as one disk to the users, and you're able to lose one hard drive out of that array, out of that RAID array. So what that does is, let's say you've got 3 hard drives, they're all 1 terabyte apiece, and you've had them in there for years, and all of a sudden one of those hard drives starts to go bad. Well, in a normal environment, if a hard drive goes bad, any data that's on it is gone, it's lost, you can't get it back. Now with a RAID 5 setup in your NAS, you could pull the bad disk out, put a brand new disk in. Now you would preferably want that disk to have similar specs as the disk you took out. So you'd want it to have the same RPM spin rate and the same cache size and all those things. It doesn't have to, but you would want it to be as close as possible to the drive that you're replacing. When doing that, the other 2 drives would help to rebuild the RAID pool. It would help rebuild that RAID array. And then everything goes back to being normal. Now, there you might say, but D, that sounds amazing, sounds fantastic. I want a RAID 5 drive right now. Well, the problem with that is this. You can lose one disk, but if you lose two at the same time, then your data's gone, right? If you lose more than one disk at a time, your data is completely gone. You can't, well, you could, theoretically, but, for the most part, you can't really get that data back. It's gone. Now, what I'm going to show you today and talk about a little bit today is the alternative to going out and buying one of these expensive prosumer Soho NAS drives. We can see this one right here from Synology is a 2-bay drive. It's a 2-bay Synology disk drive, network attached, and and this one has a remote control to it, which I'm kind of a little bit lost why it has a remote, because this is not something you'd want like in your living room. This is something you'd want like in a comm closet in your house, maybe where you have all of your other communications from your house running in. I got another update. It's the ESPN update on Twitter. Maybe you have a place in your house where all of your media comes in at. Maybe it's where Comcast or DirecTV's run all their wires and stuff too. You'd want this to be there. I really don't want to see a NAS drive sitting in my living room. Like, I don't want a big ugly box in my living room, right? Well, although I have a big ugly box. It's my own Steam box that I built though, so it is kind of ugly. But for most consumers, you want this somewhere where you can put it there and forget about it. Now, the other thing to think about with these NAS boxes is that most of these are pretty low-powered PCs. It used to be a lot of these ran on RISC processors or ARM processors, and they ran a low-level version of basically a headless version of Linux that you could do basic commands into. You could do some SSH into some of these boxes, but not a lot. A lot of the newer NAS drives support apps because everything now supports applications. So you have apps you can download. The Synology does a great job with their installation of the apps and the plugins for Synology. So does the Drobo, and also QNAP does a really great job of kind of this application process. But like I said, these are really just low powered. Most of them are like low powered Atom processors, which isn't a bad thing. The Intel Atom processors are great for low power consumption, but also being, little tiny workhorses. Usually most of them are quad cores, and they if you look at something like, let's say the Surface tablets from Microsoft, then you'd get an idea of kind of the speed of a Atom-based processor with about 2 gigs of RAM. And that's what most of these come in at, about 2 to 4 gigs of RAM, Atom-based processor, and that's it. Because it's not going to be running full Windows. It's just running, like I say, like a modified version, or not even modified, but a non-X server version of Linux. But I'm going to show you and talk about something that completely obliterates all these NAS drives. It just knocks them out of the water. All these they bow in comparison to what I'm about to show you. And what I'm about to show you is FreeNas. And you're like, free? I like free. Yes, we all like free sometimes, right? And FreeNas is definitely free, for one. So you can go get FreeNas right now, go download it, and it's yours. You can use it, do what you do with it, and make happy with it. Now, the requirements. What do you need to have a FreeNas system? Well, you need a computer, and you need hard drives. And you also need some type of media to hold the operating system. Now, I will tell you, the system that I currently have running my FreeNas server on my network, it's running FreeNas off of an 8 gig USB stick. It's a small little 8 gig stick. I didn't even need that whole 8 gigs. I could have installed it on like a 4 gig stick, but one of the 8 gig sticks that I had laying around is very, 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 very low profile, and I like that because when I plug it into the USB slot, you can barely see the drives in there. And that was just something for my own peace of mind because I wanted it to be out of the way. And if I pushed the server back, I didn't want that USB stick getting like crushed or hit or knocked around, or maybe a cord getting caught around it and yanking it out or something like that. All kind of scenarios inside of my comm closet, right? So you need a USB drive, at least I would say at least a gig USB drive. Now, don't get me wrong, FreeNas is not the only software-based NAS system that you can use and build your own NAS with. FreeNas just happens to be the one that I prefer more than the others. There's NAS for free, and there's some other ones out there. Maybe later on this year I'll do a comparison of FreeNas to the other NAS offerings out there, but I really love FreeNas because FreeNas is built off of Freebsd, and that's where the free comes from. So it's built off of BSD. And BSD, if you are a Unix environment lover, then you will know that realistically Linux is based off of Unix. And Unix is what came kind of first for the most part. So a lot of the stuff that we see with Linux now, some of that same kind of champion mindset comes from the world of BSD or FreeBSD. FreeBSD, if you want to look at it, Cal Berkeley, you got to love those guys. Great things that they did with putting together the BSD operating system. BSD is rock solid, and that's one of the things that I love about it. Now, all the code that runs in BSD is not necessarily, you can't necessarily run all the Linux applications in BSD or vice versa, but you can. There are some compatibility layers and things of that nature. But the reason why I really love FreeNas is for two things. One, it's free. Two, it's built off of BSD. I also have another BSD based system in my home, which is running pfSense, which is what I run for my own custom built router. We'll talk about that on another episode here on Dr. Media channel. But with FreeNas, if we look at this really quick, let's take a little quick tour of it. I'm running FreeNas 9.3 stable, and I'm running this with a dual socket. So this is a dual socket motherboard with two 5150 Xeons. They're 2.6 gigahertz. So that basically gives me a quad core. Now you might be like, well, why don't you go get this brand new i7? It's like, called hyper-threading and all this other craziness. Because the reality for me is that the machine that I'm running Windows on right now, currently that I'm recording on, is a Windows-based machine, and I'm actually running Xeons in this machine as well, and I'll just show you. This machine here is running Xeons, and if we look at performance, if we look at this, I can see that I have, let's not do that. I can see that I actually have 24 logical cores. So these cores are basically running hyper-threaded. And I've got 12 real cores, and then out of the 12 real cores that I have in here, I have 24 cores in this machine, theoretically. Now, for me, I do not believe in the full use of hyper-threading. Some programs do it really well, some programs don't. And I only bring up the Chaos workstation because of a comparison with this FreeNas system that we're talking about. So with FreeNas, I've got a 5150. It's an older 775 socket setup, and I've got 12 gigs of RAM in it. And you can see this thing has been up for 9 days. And right now there's 0 users that's hitting it. And it shows me my load averages and everything else. FreeNas is amazing, right? So let's look at like system. And I can go into my general and look at things. I can see that the web GUI, because once you deploy this FreeNas system, it's headless. You do not have to have a monitor plugged into this system. I can administrate this system from any other computer on my network as long as I'm able to get to the IP address. And I actually set the IP address for this so that on my network I can type in 10.1.10.16 and get to this interface. And I've kept it bound to this. and you can see what my boot is set up like, and you can see right now there's the boot volume, it's healthy, and you see there's that 8 gig stick, and I'm only using a gig of it. So realistically, yeah, you could get by with a 1 gig stick when you go to install the operating system. And I can have this thing email me if I wanted it to, and I can look at the system data, looking at the data pools. I've got 2 pools in this machine, which the FreeNas boot one just is there because FreeNas built it itself. And then I've got a media, and then I've got a renders one because I also use this for my rendering network server as well to collect all the things that I'm rendering. So if I look at something like, let's go in here and let's see. Let's say I look at something like my storage. And I can look at my storage. And what I can see in here is that I have the Phoenix Media Pool, which is a 1.5 terabyte pool. And it's got 1.2 available. And then if I look down in here, you'll see that I've got different shares that are set up for my household. I've got a 3D repo share, which is where all my 3D stuff, all my textures and things sit. I've got Kodi installed I've got Kodi boxes in the house. I've got a web server running, and I've got a place for my TV show media. I've got a place for my movies. I've got retro games sitting on here. I've even got a library where I keep all of my ebooks in this library. These are available everywhere else. And then I also have VirtualBox installed. I have MySQL installed, OwnCloud. I've got a whole bunch of other things installed. And then I've got another pool in here, another volume in here, which is my Phoenix render volume. And that's a separate hard drive unto itself. It's only one hard drive, and it's one hard drive by itself. And I use that separately because I don't care about that data. Once that data is there, it can be there for a while, and then it's going to get erased. So I'm not really that concerned by that data. If I go here and view my disk, you can see that I actually have 3 1 terabyte drives, and I have one 500 gigabyte drive. And this is the render drive. This 500 gigabyte drive is the render drive. And then these 3 here are the drives that are in my RAID 5 array. So that means that I can lose one of these drives, keep all my data, put another drive in, and be perfectly fine. Let's just hope I never lose both at the same time, right? So, it's really cool that I can see this stuff. So I can look in here and see the services that are running. Currently, right now, I'm running Zfs, so I have window shares that are set up. And I could run this as a domain controller. I could do it as I could turn on dynamic DNS, so I could access this server outside of my network. I have FTP running on this. I also have Smart running, which is for the hard drives. It's basically a health system that the hard drives can kind of tell you when they're dying or when there's problems with the hard drive. And then I also have SSH running on this machine, and I have WebDAV turned off, and UPS stuff is turned off and everything else. The thing that's really cool about FreeNas is once I set it up and I have everything working the way that I want it working, I have the ability to use plugins. So I've got a couple of plugins that I actually have installed. And you can do plugins, you can do a ton of these plugins that are already pre-configured, that they're pre-built for FreeNas. So I've got things like BitSync, Couch Potato, Crash Plan, Cruciwebs, which is, it's for cloning. So use this in a real production environment. I've got MB. MB is kind of the other version of Plex. If you know anything about the Plex media server, you can install Plex for all your media needs. Transmission, which is a torrent downloader. And a nice thing about it is that it runs on the box and not on your computer. So you can actually add torrents or things that you're torrenting to Transmission through the web interface and never have to install Transmission on your computer. And then there's a couple of other things in here. A lot of them are server-based things. And you can see what I actually have installed. I've installed like Plex, I've installed OwnCloud, Transmission, HTPC Manager, because I have a bunch of HTPCs on my network that all run Kodi. So I can administer that stuff from here, which is really cool. But the best thing about a BSD-based NAS environment is that I have jails. Now you might be like, jails? Like, no, don't put me, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be in jail, right? But I have jails. Jails are really awesome because the plugins are made to deploy itself into a jail. So if you look, you can see that I have a jail for my Plex media server, and it's bound to an IPv4 address of 10.1.10.90. So, and I can see that's a plugin jail, and that's currently running. All of these are currently running. And I also have a Kodi MySQL that's running. So I have a database running on this machine. I've got OwnCloud, which is like my own personal cloud server running on this machine. And I have HTTPC Manager running on this, transmissions running on this, and VirtualBox is running on this. Now, you might say, why in the world? Well, the cool thing is I'm able to basically have one machine and virtualize it, and I'm running 6, actually 7 when you count FreeNas itself. I'm running 7 different things with this one machine. That's where really true kind of power comes into this. So it's really awesome that I'm able to run all those things at once. And if I look in here, I look at my reports, if I go into reporting, I can even see what the CPU usage is, what my system load is. I can look back in time and see when it was heavy, when it was light. I can look at my disk and see what the, and you can see right now I've written a lot of stuff to my disk. I haven't read very much. I've been writing a lot of stuff to the disk over time. I can look at my memory usage, and I have a swap file, all this. You can see I can even see my network utilization. I can see which one of my network pieces is actually pumping out the most. It's got 2 NIC cards in it, and they're both gigabit NICs. I can see the partitions, the system, everything. It's awesome. And the other thing that really truly makes FreeNas amazing is that because it's based off of BSD, I have access to the Zfs file system, the zettabyte file system. If you want to know more about the zettabyte file system, look up ZFS. It's an amazing file system. It's, in my opinion, it's way more advanced than NTFS. It's better than NTFS. It's better than the exFAT that Windows just tried to do. It's kind of in that same journalized vein as the journalized file system underneath Linux. ButterFS is a new one that's kind of coming out. It's gaining a lot of traction. There's a lot of things that are good, that are great about what ButterFS can bring to file system. And there's a lot of things that just kind of really scare the crap out of me because I don't truly understand them yet, how ButterFS works. But ZFS is pretty rock solid. And that kind of goes into a little bit about why RAID is different underneath FreeNas. Underneath FreeNas, I don't really have a RAID 5. I have a ZFS RAID, and it's like ZFS RAID 6. And when you do it, kind of point for point, it basically is RAID 5. It just works in a really weird way. It's interesting. But I have all this stuff, and I've got this on a machine that's, I'd say 6-7 years old. It's a 5150 Xeon. Those Xeons are really meant for heavy workstation use. So this computer stays on all the time. It's never really off. If it's off, that means that I'm upgrading something on it or I'm changing things out. One of the things that I plan on doing here in the future, and it's what we're working on right now with Phoenix Inceptions Media, we are actually working on building our own FreeNas boxes because we can't sell FreeNas. FreeNas is free, right? And you can see right now I'm actually using Bitvice, and I have a SSH session going on right into my FreeNas box, so I can actually look at it and talk to it and give it basic commands like I would if I were in a real Unix environment, because I am in a real Unix environment. I can look at all those things. So, and by typing something like JLS, I can see all the jails that are running on my system. and I can see there's my Kodi MySQL jail. And what's really cool about the MySQL jail is that on that MySQL jail, I actually have MySQL running, and I have an Apache server running on this box. So I use this for web development too. And if you don't believe me, I can show you. I'm going to go to it right now. Let's go to my jail. So you can see if I click on like new folder, I've got it works, which is what you always get when you have the index, basic index file of Apache being installed. But you can see that I currently have WordPress installed. If I come in here and look at this, you can see WordPress is running, and it's running locally. So I can do all my testing and stuff locally. I have a local installation of Moodle. I have a local installation of Joomla. And I also have, which is really cool, I have a local installation of PHP admin. And I can go into my PHP admin, and you can see all my databases that are actually running on my FreeNas box. So my FreeNas box has become like 8 computers at once, and it's all virtualized, and it's all awesomeness. And I can even see there's my Kodi database from all my movies. So there's my Kodi database, like see Too Fast, Too Furious, Two Guns, 9, 13 Sins. So I can see all my movies in here. There's a database for my movies. And I've got a PrestaShop running. I've got WordPress running, Moodle running, Joomla running, and they all have their own databases, and they're all running locally. And it is just awesome. That's all I got to say about it. It's just awesome. It's just amazing. So that's my spiel, and I know this video's ended up being 31 minutes. It's been a lot more than I wanted it to be, but this is part of what we're going to do this year. We talked about last year trying to get into this, and now we're in 2016, brand new year, brand new excitement, brand new focus, and so we're trying to get the videos out. And one of the next videos that I'm going to do for you guys and show you guys is show you how to set up your own FreeNas jail and have your own local running MySQL database and your own local Apache server, all running on your own little network in your home. And I would do a setup for FreeNas, but FreeNas setup is honestly really super easy. The guys over at IX Systems, they did a great job of putting together FreeNas. Really, all you have to do is put it onto a flash drive, put it into your computer, and then boot it from that flash drive, and then it'll install FreeNas. And then once that's done, it'll drop you to a command prompt. And because you have to have a computer hooked up to it the very first time, so you can just see when you're clicking on prompts and things like that. But after that, you can disconnect it. It will tell you what your what IP address it's bound to, and it's using DHCP in the beginning. But I'll do a video on how you can turn off the DHCP and give it a static IP address, because it's really nice to have this thing with a static IP address, so you always know where it's at. But giving it a static IP address and being able to access it from anywhere. But the next video, I'm actually gonna go through and show you how to SSH into your system and be able to set up your own Apache server. And we'll do that in the next video right here. Dr. Media, FreeNas Inceptions Media. Keep it rocking, and to all my other digital mutants out there, keep digesting the media.